back to the channel. As you know, this winter I got myself a 13'6" Outcast fishing raft. We're gonna have some videos with some of the projects that are involved with that, but the first one on the list is the raft trailer. For the trailer, I've got this older sled trailer here, and it is an 8-foot by 12-foot deck. It's got like the automatic lock and brake axles. It's pretty much going to work perfect. It just needs a little TLC. So I'm going to take you through some of the things that I'm doing with it to get it outfitted for the raft and get it exactly what we need. First off thing here, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to take off some of the equipment that's on it, like this front shield here, this windshield, that's coming off, doesn't need to be there. I like to be able to see in my rearview mirror what the raft and what the load is doing on the trailer. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to probably mount the spare tire a little differently. We're going to put a lockbox on, we're going to put a rolling bar on. I'm going to replace this deck. The plywood on it is looking pretty junky, and we will see from there. So let's get started. So here's a little trick. I'm working by myself and I'm trying to take these nuts off, but I can't get underneath and hold the nut and spin the bolt from the other side with this shield in the way. I just don't have long enough arms. I don't have 6-foot long arms. So what I gotta do is somehow hold the bottom, and I don't have somebody here to help me. Here's a little trick. They make these things called vice grips. They're pretty handy. You can just lock it on there and lock it in a way so that it's not going to spin off when you go and turn it. Should come right off. Alright, so I'm getting started at pulling off the plywood here, but pretty much all the fasteners are rusted and seized. I managed to get a bunch of the bolts that were holding it by impacting and a little bit of WD-40, but there's a lot of these little self-tapping Robertson head screws, flatheads, that are seized beyond, and they just strip out right away. I can't even impact them off. So I'm going to have to do it the hard way. A little grinder and some pry bars and a lot of elbow grease. All right, so while I got the grinder out, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna keep removing some of this kind of excess metal and stuff that I have on here. There's a old ramp that is stored underneath. You can slide it in and out from the back here. I'm gonna take that out of there and just get rid of it. I don't need it. It's just gonna be for the raft. Eventually I'm going to put a rolling bar here. We'll have a video for that. So that the raft can slide up and down easy. I think I'm going to keep these sidebars on. Just nice points to tie straps to and stuff. But the back one's going to go. And I'm gonna take off the little brackets and stuff just to make this thing lighter, get rid of this ramp, take it all to scrap metal. All right, so ground off a bunch of excess steel that was all here, the ramp framing, that's it there. May as well enjoy a cold one. Little Goza from Wild Rose in Calgary. So as you can see, I can't get my grinder all the way in here to cut these tabs to get this back bar off. So what I'm gonna do is use a Sawzall and a good metal blade, and I'm gonna cut the pipe at each tab. And I'll cut it here, and then once I drop one side, I'll be able to zip off the tab at each side and take them off. Okay, so now that I got that ramp all out of there and a bunch of the excess steel all cut out, scrapped away, took off that back, sitting here and I'm going, okay, well, we may as well replace all the lights. Probably gonna have to redo some wiring. So I'm gonna go and take out tail lights, clearance lights, and we will get those replaced. They're all pretty standard. 6-inch tail lights, regular clearance lights. I've already pulled this one off. Something to do and to think of is make sure you trace your wires back. If you've got a junction box like this one does, trace your wires back and just take note, maybe draw it out on a piece of paper or something, of where your wires are going, just so that you know that when you go to rewire it, you know exactly what terminal to terminate your wires on. Just make sure it's gonna work. I've got this one taken off already. I'll go and I'll start taking off the other clearance lights and tail lights. Then we'll just go ahead and cut that black wire there. All right, so as I've been working here, I've noticed something that's not real good. Right away, I noticed that the trailer brakes were disconnected. Not a big deal, it could have just been a wiring. Just a couple of wires, hook it back up. But I've noticed that these tires are very unevenly worn. This side is really worn. This side, not so much. If you look at the wear, you can see a big slope going this way. That means that my tires are towed. Okay, so after looking at this a little bit further, I think there's something wrong with the axle. I think it's bent. This is a 3,500 pound axle and it has camber. At first I kind of maybe thought that maybe the people that had it before me moved the axles to the other side of the leaf spring and reversed the camber, but that's not the case. I went down under and I can actually see the camber on the axle. So camber on an axle is, there's a slight bend to it like this, right? When the trailer is loaded full of weight, in theory that axle should kind of straighten out a little bit and everything should run kind of like nice and flat. With this, it's not the case. The camber is the right way. So I'm kind of thinking that something is wrong within, you know, like a foot or so of the leaf springs. I've got a couple decisions to make here. Is it worth it to replace the axle, replace the leaf springs, and replace the tires? Or do I just replace the tires and the rims and just get my use out of it, knowing very well that I am going to continue to wear the tires in this manner if I don't fix the issue. If I fix the issue, everything is going to be good. Cost, Cost-wise, replacing the axle and everything is probably going to be 2 to 3 times more than just replacing the tires. We're trying to do this on a budget, so I got a couple decisions to make here. Not sure yet. Going to think about it over the next few days, but right now we're just going to continue to clean her up and kind of get her ready to keep going with the rest of the build. So. All right, so I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about with camber here. I got my apprentice Murph. She's here helping out every day, but I'll show you what I'm talking about here.
So if you look at it, you will see a slight bend in that axle. That is camber.
So that's kind of telling me that the axle is installed in the upright position, but there is a problem somewhere around the leaf spring connection that is causing my trailers or my tires to wear that way. The tires have to be replaced. They're just, I don't think they're safe to drive on, especially not with an $8,000 raft on top. So tires got to be done, but we're going to contemplate the axle. All right, so we're going to take a bit of a sidestep here. I had full intentions of dragging the trailer out today and sanding down and wire wheeling down all the rust and getting it ready for some paint just to kind of clean up the metal and help preserve it. But here in Canada in early March, it's still cold, it's blowing pretty good, it's wet. I just don't really feel like standing out in the elements doing this kind of stuff. So I'm going to take this time and I'm going to get ahead and get started on prepping the decking. For the decking, we've got a couple of things we got to look at. First thing is the amount. So what you're going to want to do is have a good look at the trailer and the framing, and you're going to want to maximize the trailer's framing for how you're going to lay out your decking material. For mine, it is roughly 8 foot wide by 12 foot long, which in theory should just be 3 sheets, right? And it will work out like that. Take your tape measure and measure out your distances. So from that end to this end, I'm 94 inches. So it's not going to work out perfect. I'm just going to have to do some trimming on each sheet. And if I go there, which is midway, just a little under 4. So going this way, I'm about 8 to support. So this is kind of showing that I'm gonna have the first 2 sheets going how they came off. 2 sheets side by side going the lengthway of the trailer. And there's gonna be almost 4 feet in between here that isn't supported. So you're gonna need a good sturdy plywood. I'm thinking 3/4 or even 1 inch. And then 1 sheet going the width of the trailer on the back. So where those 2 sheets stop at this, they're gonna come back here, and I'm under 4 feet, you can see, so it should line up good. So it'll be 2 sheets trimmed and 1 sheet trimmed. Support for it is gonna be good for what I'm using it for. If I was using it for quads or snowmobiles, I think that I would want to go with maybe a 1 inch plywood just so that it's a lot stronger, but 3/4 is going to be plenty good for the raft. So I think 3/4 inch plywood or puckboard maybe. We're going to have to weigh out some options. All right, so I got a few options for my decking, but I got to consider a few variables. My options are going to be 3/4 puckboard, 3/4 treated plywood, and 3/4 good one side plywood. The variables that I got to think about are maintenance, cost, and finish. So I'm on a bit of a budget with this thing. I don't want to spend a ton of money. So my first option being puckboard, that stuff runs about $350 a sheet. I can deck the whole trailer with plywood 3 times over for the cost that it takes to deck it once with puckboard. It's not really cost effective. Maintenance wise, it's perfect. It never breaks down. It would last forever. Finish wise, it's great. It's super smooth, just really nice, all the things, but very expensive. $350 a sheet. It's not really an option for me on this. If money isn't an option, I would recommend going that way. 3/4 treated plywood. Treated plywood is built to withstand the elements. It would last a little bit. It would last quite a bit longer than a good one side plywood that doesn't have anything on it. But it's not free of maintenance either. If you leave this out in the elements, it's going to start to break down too. You are going to have to keep up with some stuff. So maintenance is a little bit higher, not quite as much as the good one side plywood, but it is a little bit higher. You would have to put some copper 2 sulfate on there every year, 2 years, maybe after the first couple of years. So, you know, maintenance wise, it's kind of whatever. The finish on treated plywood is not the best. It's a little bit rougher, and if it's exposed to the elements, it starts to kind of chip away, and some of those chips or fibers or I guess kind of plies in the plywood, they start to come up. I'd be a little bit worried about sliding my raft onto the trailer and one of those fibers like being sharp and grabbing a seam and piercing my boat. If I pierce my boat on my trailer, no, that's not an option for me. So I think that I'm going to prioritize finish over the little bit of maintenance free that I would get. So now I'm sitting down at good one side plywood. Let's look at the pros and cons of that. The finish is going to be great because I'm just going to add maybe a urethane or something, so it's going to be a nice, flat, smooth finish. It's going to look great. Who doesn't like just finished wood? And it's the most cost effective. It's about $30 a sheet under treated plywood. You still have to account for the cost of all the urethane and maybe paint that you're going to put on it, but for the little bit of work and the extra cost of that stuff, I think that I've got it figured out. So I'm going to go with a good one side plywood. On the underside of it, the side that is going to be towards the ground when I'm pulling the trailer, I'm going to do paint. So I'm going to paint that with a coat of exterior oil-based primer and then a oil-based exterior paint. It's on the underside, you're never going to see it, but I have to seal that up because moisture will get there, rain, whatever, and will degrade the plywood. So I'm going to put that on the underside, and on the top I'm going to use a urethane product. Haven't quite figured it out yet, but I think I'm going to use spar urethane. It is a superior product for wood that is going to be exposed to the elements outside. It's good for UV. It's good for wet weather. It's good for everything. The only thing about it is you are going to have to keep up with it. It's probably going to be a yearly thing depending on where you keep your trailer. Mine's going to be stored outside, obviously. I don't really have the room in here to keep it here all year round. So I'm probably going to be, you know, pressured to to treat that thing yearly, which isn't a huge deal. I don't mind working on it, crushing a couple sodas, put a coat on. So I'm going to head to the store and I'm going to go pick up the 3 sheets that I'm going to need. I'm going to bring them back here. We'll get them cut down. And then we're going to start putting on the primer and the paint for the underside. We'll flip it. And then we're going to do the spar urethane on the top coat. Okay, so I got my plywood here, and this is a good one side fir plywood. Okay, so I decided to go with a fir because fir is a little bit stronger. The fibers are a little bit smaller. The wood cells are smaller. It's just it's stronger than like a pine or a spruce plywood. And good one side means that one side of the plywood is ready for finish, and the other side is basically like what a standard plywood would be. So standard, you can see there's knots and imperfections and stuff that aren't taken care of. If you're okay with the look of that, it's fine. But for if it's gonna have a finish, they have one side that's all nice and smooth. Any imperfection is filled with something like an inlay like this, or wood filler and stuff. So there's another inlay there. That's some of the wood filler. For doing a urethane finish on here, that wood filler is obviously not going to disappear. Like you would see that under your urethane finish or urethane. But this is just a raft trailer. It's going to be okay. If it was like a cabinet or something, you'd want to make sure that you didn't have any pieces with the filler in there. But just being the raft trailer, it's going to be okay. We're going to be good with it. So I'm going to get these measured up, get them knocked down to the correct size that we're going to need, and then we're going to get them flipped over and get some primer going. Okay, so I've measured out my sheets and my supports on the raft trailer, and I'm going to mark out how much I got to cut off each sheet. Using squares and a skill saw, I'll make and do all my cuts. For my two sheets that are going to go the length of the trailer, I'm going to stack them and cut them both at the same time. So I'm going to need to figure out my distance that I'm going to shorten it. And I'm going to want to take off 2 inches, it looks like, and probably a quarter for a little bit of room for fitting. And if there's any sort of warp or anything in the frame. So I'm going to take off 2 1/4 inches. Now, since I'm doing that on 2 sheets, I have to split that in half so that each sheet is have like 1 1/8 of shortening. So stacking them, I'm going to cut these sheets with 1 1/8 off of both, and then when I put them together, that'll be 2 1/4. Little something you'll want to keep in mind when you're cutting plywood or anything on top of something that you're a little bit worried about cutting into. Set the depth of your saw. That's what it's there for. Okay, so I'm going to be using a stain blocking exterior primer. This is going to be the best stuff for my application. If you have any questions about what you should be using, don't be afraid to go down to your local professional paint store. No knock on like your box store guys and stuff like that, but the guys that work at these stores were usually professional painters at one time. They know their products the best. I find that their products are sometimes a little bit more superior than to what you would find at your big box store. They can point you in the right direction of what you need. Read and follow your manufacturer's labels. This stuff is kind of harsh, so it says to use in a well ventilated area. Got the fan going, I got the garage door cracked. we're gonna get priming this. It also says that I can't let it be below 10 degrees. So air's on in here. I've got it at a comfortable 15 degrees. We're good to go. Alrighty, one coat done. Make sure you get in and fill all your little knot holes and stuff. After all, you are sealing it all up. I want to make sure that you don't have any exposed wood left. So we'll get in there, let that dry, and come back and hit it with another coat. All right, so I've got 2 coats of primer down. It's had 24 hours to dry. I didn't mention before, but my primer was an oil-based primer, and technically you should let this stuff kind of dry for like 28 days before applying your paint. That's what the label says on some paints and stuff like that, but I'm not gonna sit here and wait that long. It's gonna be on the underside of the trailer. So I've got my paint, I've matched it up to the primer to make sure that I'm gonna get a good bond. To do that, make sure you consult with your local paint professional. They'll be able to tell you what product to use. On this, on top of an oil-based primer, I'm gonna be using 100% acrylic exterior paint. I've just selected a black. I just kind of bought what was cheap. Didn't want to spend too much money. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started with the 2 coats of exterior paint, and then we will flip it and start with our top coat. Okay, bottom's painted. I've given it almost 24 hours to dry and cure. Next step, I'm going to treat my sides with my surface treatment. I didn't want to do paint on the sides just in case it kind of creates some like darker colored lines on the joints or white lines on the joints. I just kind of wanted it to be all wood grain on top. So I'm going to use my surface treatment on my edges. I'm going to stack all 3 sheets together and line all the edges up so that I can treat all around all 3 sheets at the same time, just save a little bit of travel. Stuff I'm going to use. Minwax Helmsman. This is pretty readily available stuff. Really good against sunlight and UV rays. Really good for rain and moisture, good for temperature changes and humidity. This is like really good stuff if you want the natural beauty of wood and to protect it from the elements. The only thing being is you do have to kind of keep up with it. So follow the instructions on that. It's going to tell you to use like a foam applicator or like a good synthetic stain brush. So that's what I've got here is a good synthetic stain brush. I've used this product on lots of stuff. It's fantastic, pretty durable, just protects your wood. So that's what I'm going to use. Follow the directions on your can for dry times and everything. In here, it's basically going to be kind of put it on. I'm going to do maybe 2 or 3 coats around the edges here, and then I'll flip them over and we'll start on the tops. Alrighty, so I've let the edges dry overnight and I flipped all my sheets over. I went over them quick with a 120 grit sandpaper and my palm sander, just really fast. This doesn't need to be like furniture quality. I just wanted to knock some of the high fibers and stuff like that off. After you sand it, make sure you get all the dust off, blow it off with an air compressor or suck it off with a vacuum. But I've got my helmsman and I got my brush ready and we are good to go.